When it comes to Skylanders of the life element, I have begun to notice a pattern of a sort. Yes, all of them are related to nature in some sort of way, but a pretty good chunk of them seem to be part of nature themselves. It's actually pretty crazy considering the fact that all of these Skylanders exhibit the basic prompt of living plant. Yet, all of them manage to be unique and memorable in their own ways, to the point that you can tell them apart through their silhouettes alone. And like their designs, their stories and histories are surprisingly diverse, so much so that I sometimes forget that some of these Skylanders can eat sunlight through photosynthesis. So I decided to gather 3 Skylanders of the life element to go over today. I know a lot of you want me to do 4 Skylanders, but I'm trying to test something going on with viewership since it's slowly beginning to drop, excluding the Q&A video that I knew wasn't going to get that many views. But with that out the way, let's get started.
Locked and loaded!
When it comes to life element, Zook along with Stealth Elf, Camo, and Stump Smash are the first Skylanders to belong to it, all of them coming from Spyro's adventure. But for today, we are going to cover only one of them, and that character is Zook. Zook comes from a species of plants called Bambazookers, who used to live their entire lives rooted to the ground in one spot before one day Zook discovered that they could just simply step out the mud that they were growing in. After that, Zook would go around Skylands helping whoever he could, using his bazooka made out of bamboo that shoots explosive thorns to protect the innocent people of Skylands. One of these adventures involved him saving an elven mapping expedition from a group of trolls. As he was wandering, he was spotted by the elves and they all began to place bets on what his bazooka was. But because of this, they didn't notice that a group of trolls was approaching them until it was far too late. But before anything bad could happen, Zook hoisted his bazooka over his shoulder and put the trolls in a montage, the mappers finally realizing that his bazooka was a bazooka. His heroic deeds would lead to a plethora of camp songs being made about him, along with the fact that he's the only Bambazooka who knows how to walk. It isn't stated how he became a Skylander, but he spends his time being a bigger hero than he was before, along with a ton more songs being made about him. Now, before we skip on to the next Skylanders, I need to talk about something that I have never seen before up until now. It's never stated how Zook joined the Skylanders. Like, at all. There would usually be something said somewhere if a Skylander was recruited or joined of their own will, but no matter how many times I go over this story, I cannot find that information anywhere. Did he just, like, show up at the Core of Light one day and everybody silently went, "Screw it, you're a Skylander now"? I even looked at the bio in SWAT Force to make sure I wasn't tripping balls, and even there it doesn't say anything. Like, what happened? Why are you here? But enough ranting, let's get to the next Skylander.
Eat this!
When it comes to Skylanders from Trap Team, for some of you, Food Fight may have been the first to come to mind. I mean, he has a pretty standout design and he was plastered literally everywhere in Trap Team's marketing. So let's see if his story is up to snuff. When a troll farmer guild tried to fertilize their soil with gunpowder, it created Food Fight along with the neighborhood garden patrol, who immediately pushed the trolls out of the garden with Food Fight leading the charge. But this wouldn't be his only adventure within the guild. He would be a key figure in a defense against a rogue army of gnomes who attempted to wrap their asparagus people in bacon, which is a pretty weird plot point, but okay. This would eventually reach Eon's ears, and he would personally invite him into the Skylanders, which he would accept. Now, when it comes to Food Fight's story, it's pretty meh in my opinion. It's not the worst thing I've read, but it isn't really the best either. The biography is unfortunately too all over the place and really small for me personally. But he does make an appearance in smaller roles in Trigger Happy Targets the Evil Chaos, Rift into Overdrive, and once again, Return of the Dragon King. I cannot escape that goddamn dragon no matter how hard I try and it's beginning to screw with me. But with that all out the way, let's get on to the final Skylander of today.
Rooting out evil.
Now, from what I understand, the Skylanders franchise is split into 3, possibly 4 timelines that all relate back to the first game in a way. But with Boom Bloom, I think that she is one of those rare characters who has a consistent history throughout all of the timelines, not just 1 or 2. In Skylanders Ring of Heroes, it doesn't add any contradicting evidence to her history, but instead expands upon it in a spectacular way, to the point that it actually made me want to make a What If I Made Skylanders 7 video just from the story potential alone. But that's going to be pretty far down the line due to the fact that I still need to watch the rest of the game movies. But before we go over her, we have to go over her creator, Dr. Crankcase. We're not going to go over him much, but sometime before or between Trap Team, Dr. Crankcase began experimenting with a substance called mutation goo in a factory he was using as a headquarters. After the deadwood he experimented on transformed into evil creatures, he moved on to living plants, one of them being a tree that would eventually become Boom Bloom. This backfired, however, when the vines began to rebel against him and try to destroy the facility. And this is where things begin to get complicated. In the Imaginator bio, it says that Crankcase and his forces managed to fend off all the plants except for her, because her mutations gave her ninja skills, which caused him to flee the facility and vow never to experiment with plants again. But there's more to this story that actually comes from Ring of Heroes, and I think that this may be one of the things that comes from this game that may be actually canon to the Skylanders game timeline. When her new form and emotions kicked in for the first time, she was completely overwhelmed by them, which caused her to rampage across the factory as Crankcase and his forces fled. This would create a ruckus all on its own and attract the attention of the Skylanders, who would send Flame Singer, Food Fight, Smolder Dash, and Treetop to figure out what was going on. When they arrived at the facility, they immediately came into conflict with the remaining security robots and some of the mutated plants before encountering Dr. Crankcase, who bolts past them, the Skylanders proceeding further into the facility before encountering Boom Bloom, who explains what happened to her before telling the Skylanders to get out of her way and charging at them. A brief fight ensues before surprisingly Treetop tries to calm her down, but she continues forward with whatever plan she has left to get revenge on Crankcase, which didn't go well in the slightest. But before her and her plants are completely wiped out, the Skylanders show up and manage to help Boom Bloom retreat before doing so themselves. This is getting pretty long, so to make a long story short, Boom Bloom and the Skylanders team up and manage to successfully evacuate the remaining plants before going on to force the Doctor and his robots out the facility. Boom Bloom joining the Skylanders as a teacher afterwards, teaching the remainder of her plants and students at the academy. Now, there's a lot of things I want to go over, but firstly, let's talk about the Ring of Heroes story. The reason why I consider this canon to the games and not the rest of Ring of Heroes is because it answers a bunch of the questions that weren't originally answered in the Imaginator's bio without contradicting it in any major way. And that the event that this all happens in seems to be a prequel event that takes place before Ring of Heroes, so we can easily plug it from the Ring of Heroes timeline and put it into the game's continuity without any real problems. There's also the fact that a lot of Skylanders have inconsistent backstories compared to the main game continuity Skylanders, which easily disqualifies everything else. I kind of view hers like the original and prequel trilogies in Star Wars existing in the Disney and Legend canons at the same time. They are basically something that doesn't really change no matter what canon they exist in. But the second thing I want to talk about is the potential story possibility involving her and Treetop. They basically have the same backstory. Two trees mutate into something that they didn't want to be, with Boom Blooms being far more brutal than Treetop's in my opinion. I can just imagine the possible story potential a person can write with a premise like that. Like a story of these two wandering Skylands in an attempt to discover who they are as people. Or, well, plants. But with that over, I think this is where I'm going to stop for today. I know it's shorter than normal, but like I said earlier, I'm trying to see something going on with viewership. And I think most of you prefer shorter videos instead of the longer 10-minute videos. But with that out the way, thank you for watching. Like always, hit the subscribe button if you enjoy content like this. Share this around so I can grow as a channel, and I'll see you guys next time.